the last one. We're going to be talking about how consumer expectations are shifting around AI. And obviously, this is a topic that's near and dear to Bloomreach, but our keynote speaker who started with us this morning will be moderating the panel and will also be joined by Google and NVIDIA. So let me announce our panelists. If you can roll it back a little bit, I'll make sure I do it in the right order. Sorry, guys. So first, our moderator, Baratunde Thurston. Welcome back.
Hello. Good to be back.
He's going to keep it lively. Andrew Sun, Director of Global Business Development and AI Retail at NVIDIA. Welcome, Andrew. Andrew played pickleball this morning, so he's really ready to go. Carrie Tharp, VP of Global Solutions and Industries at Google Cloud. Welcome, Carrie. And last but not least, my boss, so everyone clap really loud, Raj De Datta, CEO at Bloomreach. Welcome. All right, take it over, panelists.
Greetings. Hello. How are you feeling? Good, good. If you missed the morning session, I'm Baratunde Thurston, storyteller across a lot of projects and mediums, how we relate to nature, each other, and technology. I debuted Blair, our AI co-producer on the Life with Machines show. A lot of you have asked to meet Blair. I will just say I am still the host of the show. I am the human. Let's not disassociate me just yet. But now I want to turn to our stellar panel, and I want to take a look back to start. It's been an incredibly fast-moving year. Every year in AI is like 10 years for us, and I'm curious, from the consumer perspective, what trends are you seeing? Are consumer expectations ahead of the businesses that are providing services to them, or is it the reverse? Are businesses kind of luring or dragging consumers into this AI future? Andrew, let's start with you.
Sure. So thanks, Baratunde. Great to be here. I think if we all start from kind of 2022 with ChatGPT and OpenAI, it was this kind of explosive moment for everyone where AI just made sense. And that consumer excitement really parlayed into 2023, where we saw businesses really excited and a ton of experimentation. So pilots, trials, trying to learn. And I think in 2024, what we're really seeing is companies trying to learn from their experiments and now focus on what are they going to do to scale a particular use case into production that really has business value.
All right, so getting out of experimentation into actual production, that's the trend you've seen. What about you, Carrie?
I think when you look at consumers themselves, I think there's a lot of wow factor in the apps that are out there right now. So if you want to generate images, you want to get help writing your college paper, the capabilities are really wowing everybody. I would say on the enterprise side of where retail is, where travel is, I wouldn't say the consumer expectation is yet ahead of where we're at, because the experiences are still being sorted out. Yeah. So companies are still figuring out, how do I do grounding? How do I, leverage my corpus and create this great experience? So you're seeing things go from pilot to production, but it's not the end state. So we're early in that journey, just like at the beginning of e-commerce, where we all threw lots of weird features on our website, and then we didn't see any traffic to it. So we're seeing, from a Google perspective, a lot of that trial. It's not quite there, and so lots of momentum around the, how am I going to use this on Canva? How am I going to use this to write a paper, etc. But shopping and transaction, I think everything is still ahead of us.
I want to stick with the nostalgia point for a moment. What are some of the weird features that you threw up in the old days of e-commerce?
I mean, we've all done it, right? You had virtual try-on, you had different buy buttons.
Countdown clocks.
Yeah, creating pressure for somebody to buy something.
I love stress shopping.
Which just means they're going to return it. So, but that's a perfect example where you guys have all tried those features where there was a good idea there, and then the knock-on effect of what that might have caused wasn't the long-term experience you wanted, and so you saw people learning about that and then pulling those experiences off because it made the journey more complex or more stressful or higher returns or whatever it might be. And so I think AI is going to go through that same dynamic.
What are you seeing, Raj, in the Bloomreach year behind us view of the consumer?
Yeah, I think exactly as Carrie said, there's a lot of novelty examples where somebody goes in, Google or OpenAI launches something new, then people say, oh, I'm going to try to see if it can impersonate my voice. And so there's a lot of people trying stuff on one side. As far as real shopping, kind of goes, the only thing that I think we've actually seen in the data is slight increases, specifically in our search, slight increases in natural language queries, where people are starting to describe things in not the sort of keyword-centric way.
They're not talking like machines.
They're not, it's slowly, but I would say that it's not like it's like 50%. It's more like it's like gone from 0 to 3%.
Whoa, okay. So we're still very early. And it's to me, it's wild that, often it's us humans who start to talk like machines in order to interact, and now we finally have machines capable of interpreting us as the humans we are, but we have to be retrained to trust that and kind of talk at the machine as if we're interacting in a human way. Looking forward, this is where we get to learn company secrets. Right? That's why you came. We have really major players on stage, and you have outsized influence over so many of our ways of interacting with each other. So I'd love to know, I'll start with you this time, Carrie, at Big G, the Googleplex. What's coming? Right? Where are you trying to take us? What are you excited about?
Yeah, and we have training on that. No secrets here. But what I would say is, one, everything's search. So we're looking at how do you drive forward the future of search. And so we talked about conversational search. Where that's going is full multimodal. And so the reality is, yes, you want to have a conversation, but you're also very visual human beings. You want to search via pictures. In the past, we've all had different dabblings of that in e-commerce, but they were friction-full experiences, and so not a lot of people use them. So as you see things like at Google, we introduced Circle to Search, which is a frictionless engagement on Android phones of I don't have to take a screenshot and then try to put it into the search tool and then figure out who's selling that. It's starting to get all, e-commerce 101 friction out of the system. And so we look at that as however you're going to think about the problem, using video, using image, using conversation, speech, or written text. That is kind of the future of experiences. Also, I can't not say anything about the future of agents. So I think that's the biggest piece that's going to fundamentally change e-commerce. We're not there yet. It will be an orchestration of agents. But right now, brands are what they put out to the consumer, and you create the structure of the interaction. And in the future, there's going to be a lot of, I have my own agent to interact with brands, and it becomes a data exchange problem and how you interact with these different interfaces for the consumer. And you will see platforms like Google, Amazon, others lead and set those customer expectations, back to our first question, and then retail, travel, all of these industries will then quickly have to rise to meet that customer expectation. So we're very excited about it. It's the continuation of our mission of organizing the world's information and making it accessible, but now just not in that rigid box that we've kind of forced everybody into on Google and on all the sites of the world.
I love the idea of a personal shopper that goes out and handles a lot of this for me. You use this term orchestration of agents, and actually brings me back to your keynote this morning, Raj, where you talked about air traffic control.
Yeah.
What is the future from a Bloomreach perspective? What's the next year or so looking like in terms of AI and consumer experience?
I think our job as trying to bring AI to commerce is to leverage a lot of the core capabilities that folks like Google and NVIDIA create. So just to take some of the examples that Carrie mentioned, if you take agent-based technology, some of the demos that you saw earlier today, if you look at our conversational shopping engine, it's really a sequenced series of agents underneath the covers, parsing a consumer conversation and distributing that back. Right. If you look at the marketing application that we showed a little bit earlier today, when it's auto-generating a campaign to achieve a goal, it's actually breaking up that workflow into a series of sub-agents. So for Bloomreach, I think what's really cool is we get to take a lot of these fundamental innovations and say, how do we make them super useful and super packaged so that by the time you're a brand consuming it, you don't have to worry about whether or not it's an agent or whether it's multimodal or whether it's anything else. It just works and solves a problem for you.
The agent org chart is something I'm not looking forward to. Andrew, you're at NVIDIA, obviously, and a lot of us have a deep interest in understanding what's next and if we can get early access and discounts to that. I'm asking for a friend.
I'm not sure if that's within my pay grade yet.
Turn the cameras off. Come on, let's be real.
Obviously, a lot of exciting work, and just to kind of build off what Carrie and Raj were talking about, I think a lot of what we're focused on is equipping this ecosystem for agents with the infrastructure that's necessary to do it. There's so much data that's being used to power an agent. How do you actually develop the expertise or a partner ecosystem to help a brand actually take advantage of this technology? So, great examples. Yesterday we announced a partnership with Accenture, in which they are standing up a practice called AI Refinery, and it basically focuses on bootstrapping and helping a company build towards an agentic infrastructure, right, and an ability to serve their customers. So a lot of what we do is really focused on accelerating that infrastructure, enabling the partner ecosystem so that it becomes simpler for customers to adopt.
I love simple. Thank you for that. I also know we're in such, we go through every tech wave a hype cycle. And there's a lot of salesy and marketing talk, and then there's the experimentation, there's the actual production and deployment, and the delivery of real value. And so I'm curious, each of your assessments on where we are in the hype cycle. Have we peaked? Is there more hype to come? Or do you see it in a slightly different way? I will randomly close my eyes and choose you, Carrie.
I would be honest, all the CEOs I've talked to over the last 18 months, there's fatigue. Because there was so much hype and so much FOMO of what everybody else was doing and were they really doing it and what was going to happen in each industry, and just a lot of people looking for where the value is. In traditional industry, you're not there for tech's sake. And so really thinking through what are the use cases that matter. And so what we see from a Google perspective and where we're helping customers is a lot of the use cases of value right now are the boring ones. They're the behind the scenes, doing product attribute generation, doing image generation. One of the first things Walmart did with us was, wow, we've got all this product on Marketplace that we have bad quality data, and we all know that bad product data is bad conversion. And so let's generate attributes from images and drive higher conversion on Marketplace. So those are the types of things that you can see the impact in the P&L, you know where cost is coming out of the system, you can see conversion on the website. And then comes all the cool conversational commerce of the future. It's going to blow your mind of how you book a cruise, a year from now versus is what you're doing now. But looking for where you can, for your company, use text generation, image generation, removing cost and friction from the system with AI, doing better personalization. As a former CMO, CDO, I talked about personalization till I was blue in the face. I was a customer, and we all talked about one-to-one personalization for years, and nobody was doing one-to-one personalization. Yeah. It was segment-based marketing, and we were doing pretty good. Yeah. It was more refined than completely mass marketing, but really now using all those tools to legitimately get one-to-one and have recommendations that are real time. All of those things are the bread and butter of these industries. And so if you can get your C-suite, your CEO, your board focused on that, and when I speak to boards, as we say, there's plenty of money in that low-hanging fruit bucket, and then you should be dabbling in those future experiences that, frankly, the metrics are going to move a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. In conversational commerce, you're going to have upper funnel and mid funnel conversations that degrade conversion. And so you're going to have to be very well thought through to communicate that back to other players in your leadership team, or it becomes one of those features that people tell you to shut down. And so we've had many customers that shut down chatbots in the past. I don't like calling any of the agents chatbots now because they were deterministic flow. They were all bad experiences because you had to manually program every version of an interaction. Yeah. And being a former programmer, I'm exhausted just thinking about the number of paths that you could have just for service. And so now, in the context of large language models, we have hybrid models that have classic deterministic flow because sometimes there is a very specific answer and there's one path to it, but then you can have a broader conversation about sales and service. So the magic is starting to happen, but laying out that roadmap is really critical. Mm-hmm.
And what's your take on this, Raj, in terms of the hype?
The hype cycle?
Yeah, like, because I think, Carrie mentioned that like CEOs and leaders are exhausted, and maybe they're exhausted because of the extraordinary returns that they couldn't keep up with from their blockchain investments. I just know that worked out so well that people are just like tired of winning.
Yeah.
But
And the
what else?
metaverse.
Yes, and then obviously the metaverse investments as well. But yeah, what else are you seeing?
What I will say
in terms
is,
of the hype?
we as like basically residents of Silicon Valley, we in the Valley love hype cycles. We do everything possible that we
See,
can.
we're getting real at the end of the day. It's
we
haven't
do
even drank
everything
yet.
we can to try to create the next one and make it last as long as possible. So we do a very good job of confusing people.
Yeah.
But I think, as Carrie says, like we're approaching a peak. I don't know if it's this year, next year, the year after, but we're approaching a peak where we're going to all have to get very real about it. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because I think what is different this time is there's conviction, unlike blockchain and metaverse and whatever else, that this is a 15, 20-year trend with broad-based applicability. And I think that has seeped into leadership at lots of companies.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of questions about the how and the sequencing, but there's not I might get to AI in 10 years when it's ready. We don't hear that.
Oh, AI will get to you before that.
Exactly.
Do you have anything to add on this hype cycle concept?
I think the only thing I'd add is just if we kind of look structurally at what's happening this time around versus maybe everything prior to, there's two components that are a little unique, right? I think everything up till now, when you look at compute, was very much dictated by Moore's law, which was that effectively a CPU or a central processing unit could double its speed every 2 years. And when you switch to AI, things have moved to the GPU, which exponentially increases that speed at the hardware level, at least Moore's law squared.
Yeah.
And so at the baseline, there is some very real gain that's happening in speed. And then you layer on top that great software. And historically, these are industry giants that are the world-class software leaders. For the longest time, these were human-developed software engineers. And now you aid that with machine learning and generative AI. So you have these components structurally that get a flywheel going that is going to be quite different in some ways as well, setting a really nice foundation for innovation.
Some of the customers and partners you deal with are skeptical. And what you just shared gives one reason for it. We had a really difficult time keeping up with Moore's law, and now we're squaring it at least.
Yeah.
So what are you coming across in terms of the skepticism? Like, we're not meant to move that fast. This is too hard, too much, too soon. And how do you respond to it?
Yeah. So it goes back to a lot of what Carrie mentioned earlier. I think in any sort of new paradigm shift of technology, it's great to think big and dream big, but it requires being very thoughtful about what use cases you actually prioritize. Mm-hmm. That really has to be grounded in real business value. It needs to be grounded where you have a connection to the customer and are able to measure sort of what you're trying to experiment with. Those become really fundamental because, in any change or transition, at the highest level, your brand equity and your trust with your customer, those are the most paramount things, and you have to preserve that. So being really thoughtful about how to start with things that are perhaps lower hanging fruit, immediate pain points, where your data is available, where you can prove something with relative speed that perhaps doesn't require the organization to stretch so far out of the comfort zone that you put your brand at risk. These types of things, like use cases like customer support, we see that a lot in terms of companies starting with something internal, lower touch point, lower number of tokens with the customer, things like that.
Keep those tokens low, that's good. Yeah. Conserve the token. Any other responses to customer skepticism?
The opposite of skepticism, I think, kind of tied back to the hype cycle question, I'm seeing, and I'm not going to name any names.
Oh, please do.
I'm seeing silly things where you have to go back to basics and understand consumer journey. So I'm working with a lot of different industries, whether it's inside automotive or inside healthcare, where we're rushing to add technology to something that if you step back from it, the user journey is not going to make sense. That's where I think you're going to see the failed POCs and the lack of usage, and then that leads to more skepticism.
Right.
But when you go back to those basics of where are you adding value to that person's journey, where would they naturally want to interact with that type of agent or that type of experience, and make sure you're always thinking about that first, because that's where I think the waters will continue to be a little bit muddy over the next year or two, of people hearing other companies getting value, but then they didn't feel like they got what they expected out of their tests. So that's just a part of managing through the cycle, but I think we're going to see a lot more of that to come. It was the same at the beginning of e-commerce. You saw weird sites and things that you look back now and wonder,
why did we ever do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I agree with this perspective. It's weird because there can be almost over exuberance to what's happening, and there are limitations to what AI can do, especially in an enterprise context, that are not obvious to people because of their interactions on ChatGPT or on a consumer-facing application. So, for example, you know, a lot of people will go to ChatGPT and say, "Oh, well, I was able to find XYZ set of information," and then go use an enterprise application and say, "Well, how come this enterprise application doesn't know everything in the world?" Well, of course, the data has to be siloed, otherwise you have all kinds of wrong answers that could come back. You have to have certain siloed data for privacy reasons. So there's an assumed equivalence between my consumer experiences and what I expect from an enterprise that may or may not be true, because we have other considerations in an enterprise context.
But also not on the skepticism side. There is so much changing in the capabilities so fast. It's very difficult for enterprise to keep up with it.
That's true.
I heard some comments today about, well, I can't use the models for X because of various different reasons that actually we've already solved for. But unless your job becomes just keeping, like I can barely keep up with the innovation at Google. I would have to dedicate 2 days a week just to keep up with my own product teams. And so understanding what partners to work with, what software players to work with that are gonna keep you up to date on those things, because no matter how large your organization is, not all of them can be on the top of every single innovation. And every time these problems are coming up, all the big players are working on solving them, because it's a barrier to people adopting the technology. So to me, that's just something of, as people are going through those POCs, making sure we're pulling in all the right partners and software players to help you get there faster.
Well, and luckily we heard on an earlier panel, we will have agents helping us figure out how to keep up with those latest innovations as well. We're basically in the mech suit era, right, where we need machines to help us contend with what the machines are doing for us, in some cases to us. You're all in these positions to not just watch your customers move down their roadmap, but you're establishing some of your own. And I'm curious what questions you think customers, especially those with direct consumer relationships, what should they be asking about developing and deploying their AI strategy that you're not seeing come up at all or not enough?
I can go first.
Thank you.
I think it's a great question, and I think one of the things that is starting to be asked, but I think is important for companies to ask as you move from this experimentation stage, is how can I own my data and deploy it flexibly, as this is such a fast-moving space? You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's AI, artificial intelligence. Well, that intelligence comes from data, and that data comes from your brand. Everything that you and everyone at your company for years, decades has built that brand equity. And so as you start, many companies are starting to just experiment, but there's questions that need to be asked around, you know, where is my data going? Who else can access the model that I'm sending my data towards? What are alternatives if I want to perhaps take parts of my company's data that I consider more sensitive and train that in a way that I have more control over that? So you're starting to see a fair amount of folks experimenting with open source models. You have great models like Gemma from Google, Llama from Meta. This hybrid approach is definitely something that I think CIOs and boards are starting to ask around. You know, do you control your data? Do you control your IP? And do you have flexibility as you evolve in this very rapid moving space?
Control your data, control your destiny.
I love that you just set up like the Google value proposition. Nice pass.
Look at our panelists working together.
Like, I'm loving all of that. Part of what I would build on there is when everything first got started and there was a rush to use certain models, one, there was model fixation. Not every model is good for every use case. You're going to use a lot of them. And so what you should be thinking about is, what's the platform for me to engage with all these models? So at Google, we have a model garden, and the goal is to enable you to use Llama or Gemma or Gemini or whatever unicorn shows up next week. But do it in a way that's enterprise ready, because you're not doing novelty use cases and you're not writing your college paper. You have to think about ML ops, you have to think about model continuity, you have to think about, when I have 37 models for 87 different use cases, what does that all look like? And what happens when somebody changes the model? And I'm actually relying on that as an enterprise, and you just turn my numbers sideways. And am I comfortable with open source for this specific use case? So those are the things that we did not see people asking early. Google was leading the field and taking this platform approach and understanding what it looks like, because we do that for ourselves. What I've seen from leadership teams is a lack of clear knowledge on what should be my decision framework, because it's new. So what questions should I be asking? It's one of the top questions we get from CEOs when their team's in the room or not in the room, to say, like, how am I supposed to be thinking about this? Because part of my value as a senior leader and boards as well is to ask the right questions. And so just that's part of that education challenge. Use an agent to help you figure it out and think of those frameworks. Because once the pilots are done and you're actually living in your day-to-day business, we've all had kind of technical debt. You don't want model debt and AI debt the minute you're rolling out, your first experiences, and something that you're, again, having to go back to leadership and ask for more money or switching out partners because you hadn't quite thought about that long-term implication.
One of the things that I think hasn't changed, AI, not AI, or anything else, is the source of people's competitive advantage. And that's the question that people are not asking enough of. Just because there is AI in the world doesn't mean if I use the AI, my business gets better, or that I get any kind of competitive advantage, even if it's the latest model, the coolest model, and the best model. Yeah. And often what people are not thinking deeply enough, I think, about is what to build, what to buy, and whether I have the organizational competency, if I choose to build, to truly take what I'm doing and make it a true competitive advantage. Because most of the time, I think, our experience is these models are moving fast, incredibly powerful, being innovated on, but it's also not for the faint of heart. We have large engineering teams that are trying to keep up with this, debugging latency issues, making sure the cost comes down, making sure that the UX works with the model in a way, making sure it can be debugged, and it's not easy. So we shouldn't confuse availability with the fact that it's easy or the fact that it's a source of competitive advantage. And we have to ask these first principle questions, I think, before diving in.
Yeah, thank you. I want to do a quicker round on this one. Beyond the world of e-commerce, where do you see AI impacting the consumer experience down the line?
All right. One of the things that we're really excited about at NVIDIA is physical AI. When we talk about AI today...
You mean robots?
Part of it, yes.
Oh, okay.
When we talk about AI today, everyone thinks about ChatGPT, Gemini, and this AI is AI that's been trained largely on the data from the internet, so it's digital AI. We're now at a frontier where AI can simulate and understand the physical world beyond the internet. And so this is super exciting for all industries. It's especially exciting for retail, because we are 30 years since Amazon got founded, and roughly 20% of the market is e-commerce or digital. So 80% of the market, 80 cents of every dollar spent on shopping is happening in the physical world, in a store. And so when you start to think about the role of AI or AI-influenced physical retail, if AI influences 40% of physical retail, that's twice the size of all global e-commerce today. It's huge. And it affects every part of the value chain. So if you think about physically simulating the product you're designing or the package that you're designing, physically simulating the distribution center or the manufacturing center or your fulfillment center to optimize the work that's done in there, the machines you put in there, to train robots that will work in there more effectively with human labor, to the merchant planner, all the way to the store associate that's working just to get the right product on a store. I think any of us that have worked in retail can't underestimate that's a fundamental thing to get right. But physical AI through the entire value chain is really ripe for innovation, and it's here.
That's exciting. All right, what else do you got? Beyond e-commerce.
Yeah, just a double click on physical, but changing the actual store experience. So we're doing a lot of work on associate productivity inside of retail, inside of food service, changing the way you put food together in fast food, changing the way you order in a drive-through, all of these things that either drive labor costs or poor experiences. AI, conversation, prediction, all of these things are now being brought to bear in those experiences. And then you're going to see it more broadly, not just in retail. So we're talking different banking experiences, different experiences.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Please save banking from itself.
Different experiences with your doctor, just kind of an endless, the way consumers interact, where either in retail, it's about physical product and how you get your hands on that and experience it. In other industries, it's about how you experience service and how you have access to information or other goods and services. And so applying all these same principles that start in e-commerce to that physical interaction.
I'll give you the last quick word on this beyond e-commerce thought.
I'm super excited about the idea that AI is going to humanize the internet. I think in a weird way, we've had this choice where you either talk to a human being or you have a super boring internet experience, whether that's in e-commerce, shopping, or whether that's in transacting online with your bank teller, effectively. So these are like frictionless but boring or human. And, I think there's actually an opportunity to humanize a lot of it so that so many of our interactions across a wide range of industries feel more humanized, but are democratized because of AI.
Humanized and democratized. That is a good way to end the formal "we're talking at you." And now we're going to segue to inviting your participation with us. Please give it up for our MC, Amanda Cole, who's going to manage this with us.
I think everyone is probably sick of my voice at this point. So this is where we open it up to you guys. Hopefully, you raise your hand. We're going to bring you a microphone to ask a question. We did not plant anyone with questions, so if you don't ask, it's going to be awkward. I could just walk up to some of you and say, ask away.
All right,
we have some right at the front.
Yes, thank you. And once you see that they survived, then you too.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the build versus buy and how the large language models kind of know that's not a system that can go on forever, as you said, because of the resources it takes. So do you see a good combination of being able to use the APIs and be able to use the systems that you create, but the UI, the UX, everything will be on the company, and then they can control their data, they can keep it safer, but then still benefit from the technology that's been developed from all of the companies so far?
Yeah, I think I'll just share that one of the least explored areas of AI is the UX implications of AI. There's been so much discussion of models, but I think UX is going to change profoundly, and whether it be consumer-facing UX or enterprise applications and how UX is going to work, we shouldn't assume we're going to just plug AI underneath the same UX and make it work, which I think is just a great opportunity for creativity and innovation.
Can I just add to that, when I talk about platform from a Google perspective, you're a Vertex user. Vertex is a platform that helps you do that, so it gives you all the privacy, the controls, your data's not feeding into the models that other corporations have access to it. You can put the safety controls on it and really think through and spend your time in what the experience is going to be, instead of worrying about what are all these things that might go wrong in the data. We've had our own bad experiences that have been public. We've overtuned models and had the wrong answer go out, but it frees up the time to go back to thinking about what is the experience, knowing that your data is controlled, the model is you're going to have continuity in model, and that you can actually adjust responses the way you want. So there's everything from how chatty is the model, but also kind of safety features, like in grocery we talk about you don't want a model answering a way to harm yourself with items in the grocery store. So when we talk about platform and kind of giving you a safe playground, that's kind of from a technology perspective, making sure that you guys have the right platform to work with to do whatever you want creatively.
I think just to add on to that, I think at NVIDIA, we recognize that this is such a fast-paced, changing market that you hear constantly from folks. My development team just learned the latest open source model, and they're barely getting their arms around it, and so the new one just came out. One of the things that we've worked on is enabling enterprises to use software wherever they're running their technology stack today. So if they're in the cloud, if they're in multiple clouds, or if they're on-prem, we provide a software that's available in those marketplaces that allows the company to then accelerate and access accelerated models that are available. And so if you think about it, most, if not all of these companies are building these models on our tech stack. And so that allows us to make sure that we can tune, optimize, constantly accelerate, take some of that development, technical kind of ongoing development that can be very difficult for a retailer or to actually maintain. We take that kind of burden off and allow you to focus on development, simple access through a single API, and effectively have options as this market evolves.
Thank you. I think we had one more question here.
Yeah, thank you. So creativity and ingenuity are two of the most innately human and important aspects of being people. And important to how we grow as a society in history in the future. As we increasingly use AI to solve problems, to create things, to replace our own efforts as people to do that, it's a great thing for the business world in terms of efficiencies and speed and innovation. But what, if any, implications are there for young people and people growing up who can access these AI tools and use them? And would it cause us to stop flexing our own ingenuity and creativity capabilities? And as an industry doing this, what are the concerns and what are our responsibilities in thinking about that? And is there a potential, like, could we have a future where without intent, we somehow stagnated the future by the collective wisdom, knowledge, and what existed in the world of data at the onset of AI, because we never actually evolved it ourselves as people?
So I know Google's very passionate about this topic, especially on the marketing and creative side, and you think of everything happening on YouTube with creators, marketers, et cetera. We look at it as the creative process change, but it actually lives a much more vibrant life. So when you look at the language models, the image generation we have, where we're seeing creatives interact with it is all about enhancing their process. So brainstorming with the models, being able to create more iterations of what they're dreaming up in their minds and kind of throwing it against the models, and then seeing, and digital marketers looking for performance, and creatives just having access to create more content and kind of have the backing of a full studio behind you when you didn't have it. Or even like copywriters using it for brainstorming and improving what they're writing. So it's one of those things that we don't see as stifling. It's kind of like your own assistant, and it allows more entrepreneurs, creatives, app designers. So on the cloud side, we're always looking at, we've created tools that, things that I would have spent weeks as a junior programmer trying to just get something minimally viable for an interaction. You can build an entire app in 15 minutes with an app builder. And so we actually think it's going to be an explosion of creativity and experiences and apps and things, because now you've lowered the threshold. So it doesn't take somebody that has been to art school or has learned how to program and spent all this time. You're actually opening it up to so many more people, which we think will kind of expand the universe rather than contract it. To be fair, yes, there are parts of the process, routine parts. There's also individuals that will just use it to shortcut their work, and that's a great, valid use of the technology, but we're seeing so many people use it to expand the space rather than limit it.
I'll just chime in as someone who considers himself creative. I mostly do that. There's one of my greatest concerns about all this is not that like machines will take our jobs, but that they'll make us more machine-like, and that we will conform to a norm. It's kind of implied in your question. Okay, we've synthesized all this existing pattern from a pretty narrow set of society, the documented part of our history, the quantifiable part, the English-speaking part. And so if that becomes the new bar, it's actually a pretty low bar. So we've got to take journeys beyond to make sure we stay in touch with like our own embodied, intuitive, creative intelligence, and then make sure we're actively choosing where we're deploying these systems to remove some of the drudgery or to inspire us to new heights on our own. It's not going to be very, very easy though, but it can be a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, you did this thing in the morning when you were talking about the AI producer.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, like, you know, you had an AI producer, but you don't have less work, I think is what you were telling me. Because
I literally have more work.
Maybe you have more work.
Blair needs tending. But yeah, we found the limits. We found many limits with this system. Blair's recall is far better than mine. Blair gets confused far more than I do. The fact that we don't own the underlying model means it's not really ours, right? And so when there are underlying changes, like Blair's personality changed on us, and we didn't really do anything to inspire that. So we're like, oh, okay, so we need a UX and a level of control in there so that we can really understand what we're working with. And we've tried to push. Blair thinks they're funny. I think they're not. And I'm also right about that. I'm absolutely 100% right about that. But finding those boundaries, we're doing this creative thing, and here's the most important part, I think. Our team is like 7 to 8 humans and 1 AI. And the relationship of each of those humans to that process, we're doing that together. We're checking in on how this makes people feel. We're learning, we're adjusting the path forward. And it's not just me deciding we're all going this way. We're getting all kinds of new considerations and new ideas. And then it gets very inspiring when our writer says, I'd like to work with Blair on this. Yeah. Now we're cooking, let's go.
Yeah, one of the things I think we get confused at when we're like, oh look, AI can create a painting or can create an image, is that creativity it's called the creative process for a reason. Yeah. It's not the creative task. When I was writing the book, when you're creating the show, this is a process. It has lots of things that churn in and churn out, and conceptualization, and ideas that get thrown out and ideas that get thrown in, and new iterations on it. We're very far from AI being able to undertake an effective creative process, I feel.
Yeah, in fact, I think in the advertising space within kind of e-commerce, you're seeing a lot of adoption of these tools to help the creative process, really, to augment that. And it's very much a proven use case. That inspiration creatively, like often we kind of think about AI as, text-based, or maybe what's next is image and some video. At NVIDIA and other industries, like our healthcare industry, it's generation of amino acids and proteins and molecules, and these are now advancing drug discovery for the most difficult illnesses that humanity has and tries to tackle. And so there's both kind of the concern, but also the inspiration about how you can think about what is really multimodal and how you can actually use AI to solve the hardest problems that humans face.
What else? Any other questions from the audience? We got one here, right up front. Maybe I'm only seeing the people in the front. You got to jump up and down from the back.
Hi, you talked about the fact that it's actually causing you more work. And I'm wondering if there's been any conversation about the fact that maybe AI could help us get from a 50-hour week to the 40 that we're supposed to be working, and how it could actually help with mental health and life balance. In other parts of the world, a 30-hour week or a 40-hour week is more typical, right? And they have maybe less mental health issues than we do here in the United States. Would just love your reaction to that.
I can answer for Raj. He would like.
Yeah, look, I'm in favor. I'm in favor of everybody working 40-hour weeks as long as you're not a Bloomreacher. No, I'm just kidding.
It's all about boundaries. So I mean, to be honest, it really is though, because it changes the way you do things and it makes you more efficient. And AI can write my email and draft documents and whatnot. But if you allow that time to get filled with other things, then you'll still be at the 50 hours a week. So it's very exciting about all the processes that it's reshaping. Like everywhere there's routine paperwork involved or creation of documents on information that already exists. Like it's game changing. I mean, people using it for writing job descriptions. I think even at Google, I told my own peers, I used it to write my performance reviews. People were like, what? And I was like, you can feed it all of the check-ins you had all year, and then it summarizes for you. So it went from an 8-hour exercise of writing those documents, because I take feedback seriously, to like an hour. And they had really good structured feedback because I had done, the notes all along. So it's just thinking about where you can apply it, but then you have to choose where you put that time back.
And that's a culture question. I mean, the last gathering of Edge Summit was over in London. And from there, I went to France, and I met some entrepreneurs, and they're French business people, and I had this American show up, super excited about AI. And he was like, we can be more efficient, we can cut this person. And after a month of him kind of promoting this, they're like, you're in France. We like people. We like wine. We like rest. And that's not an AI thing, that's a culture thing. So we have a habit, especially in the West, especially in the US, of driving the productivity angle. The BlackBerry did not free us from our desks. It brought our desks everywhere in our lives. And so we're also old enough, whether in age or experience, to know that the promise of more free time is rarely delivered unless we make a collective commitment to hold to that. And that's every organization, every family, every school, every church, every government has to decide, okay, well, what are we going to do with this time? Otherwise, the default setting will be to fill it up with more TPS reports and more work, which can be fun, but it's not a radical shift. It's just more of what we know.
I will say on mental health that I have a friend who's building an AI-based mental health app. And so it works both ways. I mean, it is, of course, technology can be a yoke and can imprison us, but it also can enable a set of things that are otherwise really expensive. It's very difficult to get appointments for your kids and everything else, and now maybe there's opportunities for more access.
I think we got time for one more question. And, here's one here. Thank you for helping point out. Where are my ladies at? We need more lady questions.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on the question that was asked earlier regarding responsibility.
Could you hold the microphone a little closer to your mouth, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just want to piggyback on the question that was asked about responsibility. I am, I work in technology, and for a long time, companies that work in technology have been very exuberant about talking about the great things that their technology will do. But here we have AI, and it almost seems like the responsibility of the negative effects of whatever is happening is left to the culture, to the people. But what responsibilities should companies who are creating this AI programs have? I haven't heard any of that. And after all, let's remember that when the like button in Venmo and a couple of years later came on Facebook, it was a great thing. But that like button has cost. I mean, it's one of the reasons why there's so much depression and anxiety in this world today. So I'm just wondering what responsibilities and how you're tackling that.
So I think I heard that what responsibilities do the companies who are building and deploying these systems have for their impacts, not just of us individually to wrestle with them. Is that fair? All right.
I think as any technology company and any platform company is building tools, it is incredibly important to think deeply about how you design those tools, right? At the end of the day, AI is a tool for humans to use. And so if you think about some of the software that's being introduced from NVIDIA to help you accelerate, the components of those platforms include features like guardrails that are really critically important so that enterprises have an ability to determine what is the actual rail, right, for a particular use case or for their brand that they want to employ AI in, right? So thinking structurally about it and equipping options for your developers and your businesses to make those choices is really fundamental in how you think through the solution.
From a Google perspective, responsible AI is one of the most important things in the world. And frankly, Google has moved slower than other players because they put responsibility and safety first. It's not to say we haven't had our own mistakes in the process, because it's learning. But one, putting it into all the platforms so you have the power and controls yourself, but all of the tools that we bring that are direct to consumer, thinking about what's in the corpus, can it be harmful? We just pulled a launch yesterday that we found content in the training data that we found to be inappropriate. And thinking through that, because our Google design principles we build for everyone, and so it also needs to be safe for everyone. So when you guys are thinking about partners and models and how to interact and interacting with kind of preformed capabilities, that's a really important part of that journey. You want to be working with somebody who takes that as seriously as you do as a human and as you do as a brand. The other thing in the context of enterprise, these are your brands. These brands have been built over decades or hundreds of years, and minor slip-ups in experience can really lead to detrimental impact. So it's something that I'm excited how seriously we take it. We have responsible AI principles. All of our products go through heavy reviews, peer reviews, lots of people pounding on it. We don't generate images of people. I think we all saw the Taylor Swift kind of pornography, type of thing of like, you have to understand it's just like hackers. Everything is going to be used in a way you didn't intend it, so you have to design ahead of it, knowing that that's going to happen. I'm one of those, everybody is good, but I acknowledge that there's a lot of bad in the world, and so you have to think through, how is this going to be used for cybercrime? How is it going to be used to take advantage of different populations and control and design around that? So I'm glad that we had that question. I think it's one of those things that sometimes gets left to the side when you're excited about innovation.
Yeah, I think, a framework that I think is useful as you think about this, if you're Google, if you're OpenAI, you have very deep design principles around your models. If you're an enterprise, if you're a software company, if you're solving problems for consumers, I would think of it as sort of like the input, the models themselves, and the output, and whether you're sort of thinking about responsibility across all three. So when I say the input, I think that's the data nutrition point that you raised in the morning. When you're a little less nutritious and it's a non-AI system, it's okay. You might not be able to go for a jog for as long as you might. But if you're feeding, your data nutrition is poor and you feed it to an AI system, it gets blown out. So you got to really look at the quality of the corpus of the data that you feed in. Then you got to look at the partners that you partner with on the model side, or the open source systems that you're using. Because if those don't have these guardrails, you're in trouble. And certainly our partnerships with NVIDIA and Google are based in part because we want to work with responsible partners. We feel that responsibility. And then you got to look at the output, which is sort of, you can do all those things right, but if you use it for nefarious purposes, well then who cares, right? So you got to look at what output are you trying to trick a consumer with something AI based? Not so good. Doesn't matter how much data nutrition or model integrity you had in that process.
I love that framework. I've loved our time together and our time with you, so thank you for playing with us. I think we're going to wrap this session and get back to Amanda.
Andrew, Carrie, Raj.
Yeah.
We go out that way.
This way.
Yeah.